My name is Sarah. I was a wife living inside a gilded cage. My husband, Paul, was successful, ambitious, and utterly absent. For years, his work was his first wife, his mistress, and his shield against intimacy. Our apartment was sterile, expensive, and always silent. The silence was the real betrayal. That day, the loneliness became a physical thing. I was meeting a friend, seeking escape, and I drank too much, trying to dull the persistent ache of emotional neglect. Leaving the restaurant, the world was spinning. I was arguing with the taxi driver, convinced I had paid him twice. "Sir, I already paid you. You want me to pay you twice?" I was loud, aggressive, desperate for a fight that wasn't silent. It was then that he appeared, a young man, strong and firm. "Ma'am, you shouldn't have been drinking so much," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, cutting through my anger. The taxi driver, placated, took the money I finally managed to find and left. I was alone with this stranger. He was kind, noble. He didn't take advantage of my vulnerability. He simply walked me slowly, supporting me, away from the chaos. "My purse is still in the taxi, I think," I mumbled. "I have to pay you, but my wallet is gone." He shook his head. "Don't worry, ma'am. That's what happens when you're a good person." His goodness, in contrast to Paul's calculated selfishness, was overwhelming. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't arrived to save me," I confessed. "It was quite dangerous walking there alone." He introduced himself. "I'm Leo, and you shouldn't be walking in those places." His concern felt more real than any of Paul's calls. I knew I had to get home, but the thought of returning to that cold, empty apartment was unbearable. "Take me home, Leo," I pleaded. "I have to pay you properly." He drove me back, parking outside my building. I started to explain my life, the deep well of my neglect. "It's all my husband's fault," I confessed, my words thick with emotion. "He only passes his time working and never pays me attention." I challenged Leo, projecting my pain onto him. "Look, if you had to choose between your beautiful wife and your work, who would you choose?" Leo didn't hesitate. "My wife, of course. I would make her very happy. I would never leave her alone for a single moment." His reply was a direct mirror of the affection I craved. His honesty was the fatal poison that killed my marriage in my heart. He had to leave, but he left me with a dangerous thought. I gave him a small amount of cash, too much for his time, and told him it was in advance for all the rides I would need that week. He was hesitant, but I insisted. I needed to see him again. I had turned my emotional breakdown into a transactional appointment. Over the next few days, the dynamic shifted. Leo was now my regular driver, my confidant. He watched me, I watched him. The tension was palpable. One afternoon, he confessed what I already knew. "I think I have to tell you something, ma'am. I feel a connection to you." I feigned resistance. "You are making a mistake. I am a married woman. I cannot do this." But the truth was, Paul's indifference had already divorced us. "But two people who feel the same shouldn't be separated by a husband who doesn't love you," he argued, using Paul's own neglect as a moral weapon. I found myself agreeing to a simple, dangerous compromise. "I cannot accept your date, but we can have a drink on the patio." I was allowing the forbidden seed to root, knowing my emotional need was stronger than my moral duty. I justified it as survival. I was a desperate woman seeking air in a marriage that was suffocating me. My affair with Leo began not with a grand gesture, but with a series of quiet moments on the patio. We talked for hours, detailing the emotional voids in our lives. Leo was kind, honest, and everything Paul was not. He filled the silence Paul had created, making me feel seen, cherished. I would make you happy, he promised again and again. I found myself comparing the men constantly. Paul's hands were soft, unused to labor, only capable of signing documents. Leo's hands were rough, honest, smelling faintly of gasoline and hard work. One day, I impulsively bought Leo a small gift, a new jacket. It was a tangible exchange for the emotional energy he was pouring into me. I felt alive for the first time in years, but that life was built on a foundation of guilt and secrecy. This was my greatest moral failing, but it was Paul's negligence that handed me the blueprint. I knew I couldn't continue the relationship, but I couldn't stop either. It was a vicious cycle of longing and regret. The turning point came when Leo showed up at the apartment unexpected. He was visibly shaken, pale. "I saw something, Sarah. I have to tell you." He told me that while waiting for a client near the courthouse, he saw a woman, Andrea, who looked exactly like the one he had overheard Victor speaking to on the phone that day. She was elegant, expensive, but clearly agitated. She was demanding a taxi. The location was critical, the courthouse. Victor claimed he was in another city, working on a major case. Leo, fueled by jealousy and concern for me, took her as a fare. He started a conversation with her. "My husband Paul sends his regards," Leo lied, testing the waters. Andrea smiled coldly. "Paul? I think you mean Victor. And he's definitely not your husband's boss. He's mine." The lie was immediate. Leo pressed her further. "Victor told me he was working late. Why is he meeting you here?" Andrea, trusting the anonymity of the taxi, revealed the unthinkable. "Victor is a wonderful provider. We're celebrating our anniversary today." Leo stopped the car. "He's not your husband," Leo said, his voice flat. "He's my wife's husband. He's Victor." Andrea's confusion turned to dawning horror. The anonymity was gone. The truth was exposed. Paul was not just cheating. He was living a structured, parallel life. The man who lectured me on morality had committed bigamy. Leo rushed back to me, collapsing into a chair in my living room, detailing the confrontation with Andrea. "He's a monster, Sarah. He told her he was working too. He's married to both of you." My immediate reaction was cold, clear rage, devoid of tears. "Call her, Leo. Call Andrea. Use your phone. Tell her to come here, now." Leo hesitated. "It's too dangerous. He could be here." "I know Paul's schedule," I said, looking at the time. "He's probably busy maintaining his second lie." I knew Paul's schedule. His confrontation with Andrea was inevitable. I wanted to be the one to witness it, to deliver the final, devastating truth. My initial plan for a quiet divorce was over. This was now a war for my dignity, my home, and my sanity. I waited for the collision. Leo had called Andrea, wife number 2, and, using a carefully constructed lie about a shared financial investigation, convinced her to meet him at my apartment. I needed Andrea to see Paul's betrayal in person, in my home, to break his facade completely. The phone rang. It was Paul. "I'm coming home. Did you make anything to eat?" he asked, indifferent as always. "No, I didn't. I'm going out to eat," I replied, my voice cold, not revealing the emotional firestorm brewing inside me. He barely cared. "Fine, I'm going to shower, and then I'll pay the assistant." He had no idea Leo was not just his assistant's friend. He was my lover, and the one holding the match. Andrea arrived first. She looked around my expensive living room, her eyes widening as she realized the depth of the deception. "He told me he was moving soon. He said this was temporary," she whispered, tears welling up. Her sorrow was genuine, and in that moment, the rivalry vanished. We were two women, two victims, standing against one liar. We had an instant, unspoken alliance. Paul descended the stairs in his towel, casual, arrogant, and utterly unprepared for the sight before him. He saw me, stone-faced, and Andrea, weeping, standing together in his living room. "What is this?" he bellowed, his voice laced with instant panic. "Andrea, Sarah, what are you doing here?" Andrea screamed first. "Who is she, Paul? I am your wife." I delivered the cold, hard truth. "No, I am his wife. We have been married for 5 years." He stammered, attempting to regain control. I was planning to tell you. I was waiting for the right moment." His words were pathetic, his excuses vanishing under the weight of his own monstrous lie. I saw the man I loved dissolve into a sniveling coward. We pressed him on his coldness, his perpetual absence, and the financial cost of his lies. He confessed his negligence, but could not confess the polygamy. He could only repeat, "I'm sorry, I love both of you." The lie was his nature. Then, Andrea, weeping, stepped forward and delivered the final crushing blow. "I came here to give you a surprise, Victor. We are going to have a child." She clutched her stomach. Paul's face went white. The drama had escalated beyond infidelity. It was now about a life, about an inheritance, about a shattered family legacy. "And now, because of your lies, our child will suffer," she screamed. I ended it, my voice cold, devoid of all emotion. "I want a divorce. Now." And Andrea echoed my demand. "Me too. Now get out of our house, Paul." He protested weakly. "This house is mine. I bought it." I stood my ground, my lawyer's voice echoing in my mind. "No, this house is mine now." I delivered the final philosophical truth. When you break a cup, you can glue it, but the cracks always remain, and sooner or later they will break again. I left him cornered by the 2 women who were now united in their mission to financially dismantle him. I left Victor, Paul, cornered and defeated. I looked at Leo, who had witnessed the entire disastrous climax. "Thank you for the support, Leo," I whispered, the irony heavy in my voice. "Now, if you want to play a game, let's play the game where I'm finally free." My first move was to find Andrea. She was the other victim, and my most crucial ally. We met at a neutral coffee shop. The hostility was gone, replaced by a devastating sisterhood of shared trauma. We detailed Victor's lies, his work trips, his financial maneuvers, and the blatant disrespect for both of our lives. Andrea revealed that Victor had given her an anniversary ring that was suspiciously similar to mine. The key, however, was her position. She was financially dependent on him and terrified of losing the baby's stability. I, however, had the leverage. I told Andrea about the prenuptial agreement I insisted on early in our marriage, a clause stating that any act of moral turpitude or fraud would render him responsible for all shared assets, including the house, forcing a complete financial forfeiture. Bigamy was the ultimate moral turpitude. Leo, the young assistant who had been my romantic escape, now transformed into my most vital logistical operative. He wasn't just a driver, he was an investigator. He was familiar with Victor's financial blind spots and his secret habits. I hired him officially as my personal assistant and driver. He provided the physical mobility and stealth I needed. Our relationship shifted from forbidden romance to a cold, calculated partnership. Our goal was clear: find the hidden accounts and the paper trail for the second marriage. Leo's access was invaluable. He knew Victor kept sensitive papers not in the office, but in a secure, hidden box in our master bedroom safe, a safe Victor had installed himself.
Leo provided the perfect alibi, claiming he was picking up the last of his personal belongings from the study, while Victor was distracted by his lawyers. The operation was executed with surgical precision. While Victor was tied up with an emergency legal consultation, which Leo had cleverly delayed, I used my old master key to access the bedroom safe. The safe contained two things: the marriage certificate for Victor and Andrea, and the original deed to the house. Victor had bought the house before we married, meaning it wasn't automatically ours, but the prenup stated that any assets acquired during the marriage that were used to conceal fraud were subject to forfeiture. The house was his primary residence for both marriages, the nexus of his entire double life. I secured the evidence. The confrontation was over. The legal war had begun. I filed for divorce immediately, citing bigamy, fraud, and moral turpitude. Andrea, using my evidence, filed her own annulment and fraud case. Victor was furious. He tried to lock me out of the house, claiming I had abandoned the property, but I was ready. My lawyer, armed with the evidence, secured an immediate court order granting me primary occupancy based on the threat of asset destruction and emotional distress. When I returned home, Victor was waiting, raging. "You can't do this, Sarah. This is my house," he screamed. I simply handed him the court order and the copy of his second marriage certificate. The court determined that this house was the primary instrument of your fraud, Victor. You violated the prenup. You owe me compensation for 5 years of emotional damages and 2 years of rental fraud for your second wife. You lost the house the moment you tried to have 2 lives. Now I suggest you take your belongings and move in with your lawyer. You are no longer welcome here. I watched him pack a single suitcase, his face dissolving from arrogance to pathetic defeat. I had lost a husband to a lie, but I had gained my financial independence, my dignity, and the profound satisfaction of knowing I had not only survived his betrayal, but had ultimately defeated him using his own broken rules.
The legal proceedings were long and complex, but ultimately satisfying. The combined evidence, my prenuptial agreement, the 2 marriage certificates, and the proof of cohabitation in my home was irrefutable. Paul's defense collapsed. The court granted the divorce, finding Paul entirely responsible for the breakdown of the marriage based on moral turpitude and bigamy. I was awarded the house, substantial compensatory damages, and the majority of the liquid assets we had accumulated. Andrea, too, was granted an annulment, freeing her from her fraudulent marriage and providing her with financial support for the child. I faced Paul one last time outside the courtroom. He was defeated, his arrogance replaced by pathetic self-pity. "You ruined me, Sarah," he muttered. "You used my own rules against me." I gave him the final truth, not with anger, but with cold indifference. "You ruined yourself, Paul. My only crime was finding the truth you tried to bury. The cracks in the cup were always your lies." After the legal dust settled, my relationship with Leo had to face its own verdict. We had shared a profound, intense journey, a forbidden romance fueled by desperation and revenge. He had been my strength, my investigator, and my comfort. But the passion born of chaos rarely survives stability. Leo was still young, eager, and still carried the scent of the street and the ambition for a life I no longer sought. I was looking for peace, he was looking for fire. I realized that while Leo had saved me, he was a chapter, not the book. I paid him generously for his investigative work and logistical support. I explained to him that the love we shared was a necessary illusion, a lifeboat built from the debris of my failed marriage. "You made me feel alive, Leo," I told him. "You gave me the courage to fight, but the love born of rebellion can never truly build a home." He understood. He left with a quiet sadness, but also with the financial means to start his own honest life. Our relationship ended with mutual respect and gratitude, not bitterness. I kept the house. It was no longer a cage. It was the symbol of my resilience.
I sold Victor's expensive cars and furniture, furnishing the home with items that reflected my taste and my comfort. I am now financially independent, legally free, and emotionally whole. My life is quiet now, and the silence is finally peaceful, not suffocating. I learned that the greatest betrayal is the neglect of the self, and the greatest act of revenge is reclaiming one's own dignity. I sometimes think of Victor and Andrea, each ruined, but each forced to face the consequence of their own choices. I found my strength in a simple, honest man who worked a desperate job, and I found my freedom in the meticulous enforcement of a contract written years ago. The cracked cup will never be fully repaired, but it no longer holds poison. It holds my future. And that future is entirely mine. If my story of vengeance and self-discovery resonates with you, or if you believe in the power of women to reclaim their dignity, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for enduring this long journey with me. May my experience be your roadmap to freedom.